I think it is blizzard conditions. There will be a lot of crosswind. Turbulence is moderate, so if nothing else, your plane should be somewhat smooth flying or predictable. And we will be starting some airfield to the far northeast above the mountain region. And we're going to fly about 150 miles tonight to our destination airfield, Sochi Adler, I believe. It's either Sukumi or Sochi Adler, but I'll know once we get in there. I'll let you know. Our waypoints kind of indicate the airfield we'll be landing at. So most aircraft, have ILS, which basically gives them cheat mode for landing in low visibility conditions. And weirdly enough, the Hornet has that, but only for the carrier, only has ICLS. Our ILS does not work for airfields. So we can land at airfields precisely, but we have to use a different set of methods to achieve that. First thing I want to talk about is some concepts about your HSI. First off, your aircraft symbol here isn't necessarily always straight up and down. You can see here from this picture, it's kind of crooked. It's pointing off in a different direction. And in fact, this long line, it's called the lubber line, and it indicates the direction the nose of your aircraft is pointed. So why is it like this? Why would the aircraft be crooked? It's because the up direction, the ground track indicator, is always straight up, and straight up always indicates the direction your aircraft is traveling in. So just by looking at this, we can tell that the aircraft, even though the nose is pointed this way, it's traveling straight up. So the aircraft is crabbing. And this is extremely common in crosswind conditions, right? So you're coming, and you see, I know for a fact you guys have seen videos of airplanes coming in crabbing, kind of sideways coming in for that landing. And so that's kind of what this HSI is helpfully indicating here, that you are in fact crabbing. Here's your nose, here's where you're traveling. So there's, at least in this instance, about a 4-degree crab. So you will be seeing this tonight. There's going to be crabbing. So when we do, I'm going to get into some of the details a little thicker here later in just a minute. But a big part of what we're doing tonight is we're putting a waypoint on the airfield. We're putting a waypoint where we want to touch down at, specifically on the runway, and we're punching in a course line. So when you punch in a course line and you have waypoint boxed, it puts a line straight through that waypoint, and you get to choose the direction that the course line is pointed. And so from this indication, the way this looks, some people might be inclined to say, oh, this looks like a pretty good course because your airplane is on the course line and its nose is pointed towards the waypoint. But remember what I was just talking about. Your nose isn't the direction you're traveling. You're traveling upwards towards this ground track indicator. So if you keep flying as is, your airplane isn't going to end up here. Your airplane is going to end up right here, totally off course. It's going to fly this way. So this is problematic. This is not what you want to see. As opposed to this example here, where this is a good course. This is a great course because your waypoint is upstream of your airplane per the ground track indicator. And you can tell, oh yeah, my airplane's crabbing a lot, but you just have to get used to that. You're going to have to be comfortable with the crab while you fly in kind of sideways towards this waypoint. It can be a little bit tricky because sometimes your airplane's going to accidentally end up here a little bit, or it might end up a little bit over to this side, left or right. And you kind of have to play with the direction your nose is pointing to establish your crab correctly so that you are following the course line. So this can be a pretty manual process, and you'll just have to tweak it as much as you can while you fly. And my recommendation is stay as zoomed in as you can while you're doing this. So 40 miles in this example is not really adequate. In this example, this waypoint is 14 miles away. So you might zoom into level 20 or level 10, and it'll make it easier to see how far off the course line you are. Another helpful indicator I want to point out, down here in the bottom right is your course line information. Here it says that the course line is punched in for a bearing of 077. That's just the angle that the line is following. But then this value up here, it says 0.3C. And what that means is your airplane, if you drew the shortest possible line from your airplane to the course line, it'd be 0.3 miles away. So that's pretty helpful. When you're flying your plane tonight and you're trying to follow this course line, this value should be as close to 0 as possible. If it is 0, it won't even be there. When you're coming in for a touchdown, you can't be a third of a mile off the runway. It won't work. You won't see the runway when you touch down. So you have to really manage your left and right control while you're flying in. So do keep a close eye on that. Are there any questions with this concept so far?
Yep, just a small question. You said it's deviation, right? This C value.
Yeah, it's how far away. In fact, let me just do this so that we're on the same page, because that's not really a good graphic for demonstrating it. 1 second, bear with me. Okay, here's you guys see my Microsoft Paint here?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, here's your little airplane symbol. Here's, let's say your waypoint is right here. And here's your course line. Let's say, there's your course line. So that number down here, there, let's say the number was like, sorry, let's say it's like 1.5. Let me boost this up to like. So if it says 1.5, what it's saying is that the distance from your airplane to the course line is 1.5 miles. This red line is 1.5 miles. Does that make sense?
Yep, that kind of answers the question I was about to ask, which is it deviation compared to your current course line or the runway?
That's a good question. It's your course line. So, yeah, so like I said, you need to fly this course. You need to be on the line. So you want this value to be 0. You want that red line to be non-existent, essentially. And you want this point on the symbol to be right on that course line. You can actually tell kind of from this picture that the airplane's a little bit far to the left. But that's just what that indicates.
Quick question is it 0.3 because of your crabbing?
No. When you see this airplane symbol, where your airplane actually is this point right here where like the wings meet the fuselage. And that point, which represents your airplane, is 0.3 miles away from the course line. Gotcha. So no, crabbing will not really affect that. Your airplane's not big enough to affect it. Any other questions? Okay. Let's go into, I want to show this picture real quick. This is something your HUD might look like while you're crabbing. So what we have here, we have a caged HUD. You can cage and uncage your HUD whenever you want. And what that means is a caged HUD will keep the pitch ladder and all your symbology nice centered on your HUD, even if you're flying off to the right here or crabbing. So that, this symbol is kind of hard to see, but when you have the HUD caged, you get this new indicator that shows your true velocity vector. So this airplane isn't traveling in this direction. Sorry, let me get my pointer back up. It's not traveling in this direction. It's traveling in this direction. I do not prefer flying caged. This person in this picture is flying caged. I don't like that. I like the pitch ladder and everything, all the symbology to be over here. Even though it's hard to see, it's just a personal preference. It confuses me sometimes when it's split up like this. So know what your cage uncage button is and try out both modes while you're flying tonight to get a feel for which one is right for you. Any questions with that?
That explains why sometimes I see it move and sometimes I don't.
Yep. That's basically it. All right, so let's talk about what we're doing. Everyone's going to be kind of flying on their own tonight. This is kind of a solo tasking. Okay. Everybody is going to do this setup process. So taking off, I'm going to use air quotes. It's easy. You line up on the runway, you take off, you climb. There's not any magic to it. Just good rudder controls, and you should be able to get off the airfield without hopefully too much problem. So all this procedure is regarding the recovery. So what's the first step? It's to create a waypoint at the touchdown point. So you'll need to go in your HSI and create a waypoint for where you actually want your airplane to land on the runway. I will provide this coordinate tonight once we're in the air. I'll just provide it over communication SRS. And I might even post the coordinates in the Discord in case it's better. It's going to be right at the beginning of the runway. Yep.
If you weren't providing that coordinate, how could we find it? Should we use the F10 map or something?
Yes, you should.
Okay.
F10 map. If you guys don't know, left alt, left click on the F10 map will give you a waypoint readout that you can bring with you to your F1 view, your cockpit view, and punch in those values so you don't have to memorize it.
I don't remember how to punch in waypoints.
I'll work with you on it.
Okay, thank you.
Not a big deal. All right, so once you have your waypoint, you're going to waypoint designate it. And I don't mean just boxing the waypoint up here. I mean, you're actually going to designate it as like a target. Why do we do this? It's because unlike putting in a waypoint, just punching in the waypoint box, waypoint designate puts a lot of care into the altitude of the waypoint too. It actually shows it on your HUD and on your HMD, the altitude, the physical position of that waypoint. You don't get that when you just box this. This just gives you a heading. So we're flying a diamond tonight. In fact, this is what the diamond looks like. You're going to be aiming for that diamond. That's literally, if you follow the diamond true, you will hit that point. So that's why after we create the waypoint, we're going to waypoint designate. After that, we're going to enter the magnetic course line for the airfield that we're on the runway we're going to land at. Then we're going to set an appropriate altitude warning on our radar altimeter. This is to wake us up when we're close to terrain. If you're in very mountainous terrain, you want this to be a pretty high value. But where we're landing is mostly flat with trees and power lines. So 500 feet is sufficient. And we're going to double check like our anti-skid. I recommend having your landing lights off because landing lights actually kind of hurt visibility in the rain and snow. So that's all the setup. Then there's this phase where you're approaching. You're kind of far away from the runway, but you're getting yourself prepared. So this is the point where you're flying a set airspeed, about 300 knots. You're flying a good altitude, about 2,000 feet, so you're nice and low to the earth. Unless it's mountainous, then it would not be 2,000 feet, but 2,000 feet would be sufficient here. Radar, not barometric. And lastly, we're maintaining that course. So in this phase here, we're basically doing this. You know, we're 14 miles away, we're 20 miles away, whatever, and we're grabbing this course line. Then once we get very close, about 8 miles, we're going to perch. We're going to drop our gears and flaps. We're going to reduce speed to well below 250 knots, you're going to get trimmed in, get your AOA trimmed in. And you're going to start descending 2.5 degrees on the pitch ladder. And what you're really doing here is flying for the waypoint diamond. So you're trying to put your velocity vector on the diamond. That's the important thing. If your velocity vector is on the diamond, you will hit the diamond. Any questions with that? All right, give me just a sec to boot up the server. This is going to be pretty casual.